What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW Videos. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a deeper look at the special lure modules in Pokemon Go and why they may not be a good idea for Community Day Pokemon. A lot of people have had some questions related to that. Should you go ahead and put on these specific lures to help boost the Community Day Pokemon even when the typing is right? For example, we have a Mudkip Community Day coming up, and with it being a water-type Pokemon, we should be able to see some action related to the Glacier module. But unfortunately, there has been some research come out by the Sylph Road team talking about the specific spawns and how there are only 13 that are guaranteed from it. We are going to be talking about that. This is very important, so I'm calling this a service announcement. Make sure that you let people know in your community to not use these modules when you are trying to boost it during a community day. It could actually end up negatively affecting it. So we've talked about it a little bit. Let's go ahead and take a look at the graphic that they created looking at the specific Pokemon as well as a catch. So I mentioned that there was a catch, and I want to go ahead and address that first. What you're seeing on screen dictates 50% of the species that end up spawning from the different modules, and the other 50% are actually determined by your biome. So keep that in mind. Particular Pokemon that you see all the time, you're most likely going to see them again, especially related to the grass ones. Like for myself, that's the biome that I live in. But we're going to talk about these species, some of them as well that have kind of been rumored that are for sure not in these lure modules, and then talking about how it can benefit you on community days as well as hurt you for the most part. We'll go ahead and talk about some of the exceptions. So the first one would be Swinub. If we end up having these types of modules during the Swinub Community Day, it would make sense to put on the Glacier module during that time period because you can narrow down what ends up spawning from the lure as opposed to the normal one, which can just be anything and everything. This Glacier module would narrow it down. And then the second one that will be coming out in the future, which means we can adjust our strategy, is Piplup. So Piplup, a Generation 4 starter, once that ends up coming out, it will make sense to use the Glacier module because it will kind of condense it down to the potential spawns. It's not going to be that big of a deal. This is just going to be something that if you want to do it, then you would do it, but it is going to cost some money for these different lures, so keep that in mind. But it is kind of cool to just showcase exactly anything and everything that can spawn from it besides your actual biome, so keep that in mind. Moving on to the next one, the Masya Module. When we take a look at it as far as potential starter Pokemon being put in there, you're not seeing any of them. And as far as some type of community day, I'm not really seeing anything that would kind of showcase it now. This is probably going to change over time. I mean, to be honest, it could be a flip of a switch, but in this case, it just does not seem beneficial from any type of community day perspective. So if we end up seeing something for like a Sceptile, right, which we ended up seeing already, this would not have helped. And then moving on to the final one, the Magnetic. As far as the Magnetic is concerned, we do see one on there with Beldum, but Beldum came out before the modules even happened, so in that case it would have helped with boosting the spawns. Then when you take a look at some of the other ones, we even have a Mareep, for example. That's a pretty interesting one, and something that I felt needed to be pointed out that was also mentioned in the article was that Cranidos was not spawning from this specific module, from the Magnetic Lure module, so keep that in mind. This is what you will see, especially related to the rarer ones, and it is something that we are going to have to be very conscious about moving forward because we could end up basically nerfing our overall spawns, especially related to events. That's when people are getting very curious about these and they think they're helping, but it is very important to understand how this feature works exactly. And having looked at this specific list, I'm personally thinking that it just does not make any type of sense to use the lure modules during a community day. Maybe during some type of other event it would make sense, but because community days are focused on specific Pokemon, if they are not on this list, I would not recommend using it, so make sure that you do spread the word to your community. So anyways, that just about wraps up the video. I want to know what you think about this in the comment section below. Does this catch you by surprise? Did you expect this? What are your plans moving forward with the lure modules? Definitely let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you next time. This is where we give a huge shout out to the patrons on Patreon. As many of you may not know, as far as YouTube content creators are concerned with smaller channels, you don't make that much money, although there is a lot of hard work that goes into it. So support on Patreon is very important to smaller creators, and I want to say thank you so much for everyone who has chosen to be a part of it.